Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all and welcome to the channel. This is an exciting series, or rather, I am excited to present this series mainly because I discovered a new tabletop role-playing system called the Novus Mundus. Technically, I did not discover it. It was created by a friend. And after reviewing the mechanics, I realized that this is probably the best tabletop role-playing system I have witnessed. There may be others that I am unaware of. But to me, specifically after playing the Baldur's Gate 3 and engaging in the mechanics of D&D 5th edition, or systems similar to D&D such as Pathfinder, I believe that this is the best tabletop role-playing system. The reason for that is because this system factors in the skills of the character rather than luck. With tabletop role-playing systems, generally, actions or the success of a particular skill check, for example, is determined by the luck of the draw, as they say, or in this case, the luck of the roll. If you roll high enough, even if you are an inexperienced individual, you succeed. But if you roll quite low, even if you are a veteran or an experienced individual, you fail, which tends to cause frustrations with players. Some may disagree with me and claim that they enjoy rolling dice. That is not true. It can be humorous for 1 or 2 times, but if you as a player are in a critical moment and you fail constantly because of the dice roll, you would not be laughing, you would actually be enraged and infuriated. And I say this because I have seen it. A specific example that I remember clearly was a person who a fighter, I believe, for D&D 5th edition. He was a fighter at level... Oh, sorry, I have to take this. I will be right back. Apologies for that, I have returned. As I was saying, there was a warrior, I believe he was level 10 perhaps, and he had the strength score of 18, which is quite high. I could be mistaken with the level, but I am certain the strength score was 18, and he was fighting a level 1 spider. He missed the entire time, and the one who actually killed the spider was a lowly sorcerer without any offensive capabilities whatsoever, even magically speaking. The character was completely weak, both physically and magically, or spiritually, however you wish to view it. And I realized that this system is a ridiculous system to use for tabletop role-playing. It should not be used or it should not be used as a tabletop role-playing system because it is based on luck. It does not factor the skill of the character, nor does it factor in the experience of the character. You could be an erudite that fails all the checks related to history, arcanum, religion, and so on and so forth, because you rolled quite low, so your experience is worthless. Your skill is worthless, which is why I love this system. And I believe what proves that this is the best system I discovered for tabletop role-playing is the fact that I could not play Baldur's Gate 3 after discovering and reading these rules because of how ridiculous the what are they called? The skill checks are with respect to difficulty classes. Your skills and experiences matter not. All that matter is gaining or rolling a high number. That is it. That is all that matters. You could have a character whose scores are 8 or below, yet you could roll a high number even with the negative modifiers. So it is a rather ridiculous system. Because I know that the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rule set is quite popular, why, God only knows, but considering it is a dumb system with stupidly convoluted lore, but anyways, since it is a famous system that most people know of, I will be using analogies to compare the mechanics of this system, the Novus Mundus system, with Dungeons and Dragons. Hopefully that analogy will help people understand the mechanics of the new system. With that introduction, we can actually begin with the first aspect of character creation, and that revolves around what is known as pillars. The pillars in Novus Mundus are the same as, I should probably use a different color to connote for Dungeons and Dragons. Let us use green. Actually, there is a reason why I chose green now that I think about it. These are the abilities. In Dungeons and Dragons, there are 6 abilities in total: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. 6, yes. Though some people who are watching this series of videos may be unaware of the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rule set, I will also be explaining each aspect fully. However, I will be using these for reference in case the viewer knows Dungeons and Dragons and they are able to understand the concept clearly. But for those who are unaware of Dungeons and Dragons, I will be explaining each concept, hopefully fully. I have asked the creator to provide the manual for the mechanics, as well as what he calls the web diagram. However, he is still adjusting or fine-tuning, as they say, certain dynamics within the system. For those who are interested in the lore of the world, which is rather expansive, and I say this because he shared the lore of the world with me, not fully obviously, but a portion of it, and I realized that the lore is quite rich and profound. That I will have to ask for his permission, obviously. But this system can be used for any type of lore. Now let us begin with the pillars. And they are called pillars because they are basically the pillars of your character. They determine how you wish to design your character. We will begin with the first pillar. Perhaps I should add a line here to separate. And let us begin with the first pillar, which is might. As you probably have inferred, might equates to strength. I say equates, but it is not the same truly. It is actually similar, not the same. Might governs the physical prowess or the physical aptitude of the character. For example, determining the, what is the word for it? The power of a punch or a kick is might. Might determines the power of a punch or a kick. It also determines how powerful your character is with respect to grabbing or blocking melee attacks, as well as lifting heavy objects, pushing and pulling heavy objects, and so on and so forth. So that is determined by the might pillar. The might pillar covers both the upper half of the body and the lower half of the body. So if you wish to design a character that revolves around melee attacks, mainly punches and kicks, you would be spending most of the points into the might pillar. We move on to the next pillar. Obviously, this will become even clearer once we explain the entire system. Then we start creating a character, which will be the final video, bi'ithnillah and God willing. Hopefully that will explain fully how each pillar with its respective reasons function, and we will cover reasons later on, bi'ithnillah and God willing. We have finesse, and that is similar to dexterity. Finesse, I should probably select transparency here. Finesse determines the character's acumen or adroitness, deftness or nimbleness. Basically, finesse governs how delicate a character is with a skillful approach. For example, if a character wishes to perform an act of what is known as close-up magic, that will be governed under finesse. If a character wishes to be stealthy in a particular event, that will be governed under finesse. If a character wishes to use a delicate weapon such as bows, that will also be governed by finesse. In addition to obviously pickpocketing, lockpicking, and so on and so forth, that will be governed by finesse. We move on to another pillar. Once we discuss the reasons of each pillar, then the proper functionality will emerge, hopefully. The next pillar we have is endurance. And that is similar to constitution for D&D. I will drag this here like so. Endurance governs the character's toughness or defense, the ability for a character to withstand strikes or withstand critical attacks, as well as health or hit points, also known as HP. However, hit points function quite differently in the Novus Mundus system, which we will cover later bi'ithnillah and God willing, and we will cover why it functions in that particular manner. Let us see what else is next. Oh, and this also governs hunger, thirst, and fatigue. Let us see here. We will add erudition. Oh, I just realized there are two pillars that start with an E. Okay. So this is similar to intelligence. This pillar governs the theoretical knowledge a character attains. It may be slightly different than intelligence with that matter, with that concept, or rather people may disagree with me on that, but erudition is what a character learns in a classroom without practical implementation. That is known as erudition. For example, a character that is learning about anatomy in a classroom, this will be covered by erudition. That particular skill or that particular event will be governed by erudition. The practical implementation of that anatomical class or course is governed by a different pillar. So these two pillars will be closely related to one another, but they will not necessarily be dependent on one another. There will be certain factors in erudition that are irrespective or inconsequential to the practical implementation. But this is basically related to scholastic or academic endeavors. Let us move on to the next pillar, which is pragmatism. And then add the arrow, and you probably have inferred that it is closely related to wisdom. This pillar involves the practical implementation of this pillar. If a character wishes to perform a medical procedure on another character, that would be pragmatism. However, if the character lacks important information related to that procedure, the chances or the probability of the success will decline. So these two are closely related to each other. However, there are certain reasons or certain skills that are governed by pragmatism that are not related to erudition. And we will cover that later, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, and God willing. And as I said, once we cover reasons, you will understand the full functionality of all the pillars. Reasons are the same as skills in Dungeons and Dragons, such as sleight of hand, stealth, acrobatics, athletics, and so on and so forth. But in this system, they are called reasons, and obviously they do not share the same name as in D&D, but also their dynamics differ, and we will see that later on, bi'ithnillah, and God willing. Then we have conveyance. This is similar to charisma in Dungeons and Dragons. This pillar governs how a character portrays, depicts, or conveys himself to the public. Skills such as poetry or prose, mainly rhetoric, are governed by conveyance, as well as the character's ability to disguise themselves accordingly. That is also governed by conveyance. In addition to different arts, such as the art of conviction, the art of fear, and the art of lies, which we will cover later, inshallah, bi'ithnillah, and God willing. Those are the pillars that match or are similar to the abilities in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. The remaining pillars, which are 3, are quite different, or rather absent, from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. The remaining pillars are, and you probably now know the total number of pillars in this system. Agility. This pillar governs the speed of the character, which also determines the character's turn order in combat, because this is still a turn-based system. You cannot, at least as far as I can tell, you cannot design an action-based system in tabletop role-playing. That is my vision. Obviously, there could be someone who is creating a system that factors that into the equation, but for me, my viewpoint determines that this particular system cannot be integrated into tabletop role-playing. So this determines the speed of the character, as which also determines if a character is able to interrupt an attack started by another character, in addition to the stamina of the character, because different attacks with different weapons consume stamina differently. And the character obviously requires stamina to be able to engage in an action. If the character does not have the required stamina for consumption, they obviously cannot engage in that particular action. And if the character's stamina is fully drained, that also leaves the character in a rather disadvantageous situation. That is agility. Next pillar is, I have it written down so I do not forget. Dogma. Dogma determines the level of devotion a character has to a particular religion. This may seem closely related to intelligence, particularly the skill known as religion. However, the skill known as religion under intelligence determines the knowledge of a character in a particular worldly religion, whereas this pillar determines the devotion of a character to a particular religion. If a character is fully devoted to a religion, he unlocks certain skills or certain additives that can be used to assist that character in difficult situations. Again, we will observe this closely once we learn about reasons, bi'idhnillah and God willing. And finally, we have resolve. This may seem slightly similar to dogma. However, resolve is added simply because you can find a character who is resolute but not religious. That is why resolve exists. It does add features, skills, or abilities that are not unlockable in dogma, and vice versa or vice versa with dogma and resolve. Resolve determines the degree of resoluteness a character has. It also determines if a character is able to withstand a deadly attack, similar to, if any of you played Call of Duty, there is a feature known as Last Stand, where a character is able to function in a prone position to kill other enemies before dying. That is similar to the resolve pillar. But as I mentioned, these pillars will the functionality of these pillars will become more apparent and more prominent once we look at the reasons of each pillar and the abilities granted by each reason. That is it for this video. In the next video, inshallah, bi'ithnillah and God willing, we will look at experience gaining, leveling up, and the difficulty classes of a skill check. For those who are unaware of the jargon used from D&D 5th edition, we will look at how the probability of success or failure in a particular action is determined in this new system. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the difficulty is set by what is known as a difficulty class. Then a player has to roll a 20-sided die to see if the resultant number is greater than or equal to that difficulty class. The system in Novus Mundus is completely different. It is known as the path instead of a skill check, but we will cover that later on, bi'ithnillah and God willing. And that is it for this video. Once I have access to the finalized manual or handbook, if you wish to refer to it as such, I will be associating a link with this first video in the description below, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, and God willing. That is it for this recording. I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Be safe, take care, and peace be upon you all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.